Welcome to Rustler's Reminiscence, stories of hope, faith, and frontier courage. Let the journey unfold. The boys showed up on a Monday when the air smelled like dust and something forgotten. I was sweeping the boardwalk outside my sewing shop when I saw him, no more than 6 years old, standing stiff as a fence post, clutching a broken wooden horse in one hand and a crumpled dollar in the other. His face was smudged with dirt, hair chopped like someone had taken shears to it in the dark. "Ma'am," he said, voice like paper, "I got $1. I'd like to buy a mama." At first I thought he was begging, maybe for food, maybe for attention, but he didn't hold the dollar out like a plea. He held it out like an offer, a trade. His eyes were too calm for a boy his size, and something about the way he stared made my lungs feel too small. I looked around. No wagon, no grown-up, no other children. Just him and his toy, the kind with wheels on the feet, one of which was snapped clean off. "You lost?" I asked. He shook his head. "Been looking. You look like a nice mama." There was no smile, no desperation, just certainty. The kind that tightens your spine. The kind that makes you feel like saying no would be breaking something worse than a heart. My name is Lena Moore. I've lived in Drake Hollow for 6 quiet years now. Before that, I lived somewhere I don't speak of. Before that, I was married. And before that, I was pregnant. My husband died in a mill collapse 2 towns over. And the baby, well, I never held it, never even saw its face. The doctor said some pain is better left buried, but the day that boy stood there with that damn dollar, something came loose in me. Not a crack, a shift, a stirring. He looked up at me with those strange, dry eyes and said, "If you don't want to be bought, I understand." The way he said it, flat, polite, final, made me drop the broom. "What's your name?" I asked. "Tommy." "Well, Tommy, where's your real mama?" "Didn't pick me," he said. That's all he gave me. Like that was all I needed. Should have taken him to the sheriff. I should have asked more questions. Instead, I knelt, picked up the broken horse, and said, "You can stay just for tonight. No buying needed." He didn't smile, just nodded and took my hand like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. As we walked back into my little house, quieter than a prayer, I swear the wind shifted. The scent of lilacs, though they hadn't bloomed in months. A breeze stirred the curtains, though the windows were shut. Later that night, I found his dollar still on the porch, laid flat like an offering. I didn't sleep well. Every creak of the house felt louder, every shadow heavier. I told myself I was being foolish, that he was just a lost boy with a strange way of talking. But deep down, something had already taken root. Something told me this wasn't a rescue. It was a return. Tommy didn't cry, not once, not when I drew his bath, not when I gave him my husband's old flannel shirt to sleep in. Not when he caught sight of the folded photograph on my dresser, me and Caleb on our wedding day, smiling like fools, years. Before the hospital, before the silence, most children, when scared, cling or stammer or weep. Tommy just watched, quiet, still, like he was memorizing the angles of the house. That night he asked if he could sleep on the floor, said it felt more familiar. I let him. He curled up with that broken wooden horse like it was armor. The next morning I heard tapping. It started before dawn, 3 short taps, then silence. I checked the front door. Nothing. The windows. Nothing. But when I stepped into the hallway, there were wet footprints leading from the front door to Tommy's room. Small. Bare. Too small. I asked him about them over breakfast. He shrugged and sighed. "She always checks." "Who?" He looked up from his bowl of oats. "The one with the bandaged eyes." I nearly dropped the kettle. But he didn't say another word, just went back to eating, like it was normal, like I should already know who he meant. By midday, the sheriff came knocking. Said someone from New Providence Home for Boys claimed a child matching Tommy's description ran off last week. Name wasn't Tommy, he said. That boy's name was Emmett. I told the sheriff I hadn't seen anyone strange, though I knew he didn't believe me. He stared at the little shoes by my door and said, "Miss Moore, harboring runaways is still a crime, no matter how kind your heart." That night, Tommy said, "They'll come back, but they ain't the ones you should be scared of." I asked him what he meant. "She's the one who watches," he whispered. "She taps to see if the trade still holds." Trade. That word scratched at something in my brain, a whisper beneath memory. A cold breath behind my ear. I went to the hall mirror then, the one beside the lampstand. I'd walked past it 1,000 times, but tonight the glass was cracked clean down the middle. I hadn't noticed it before. Could have sworn it was fine that morning. I stared at myself. My reflection seemed tired, off, like she'd been through more than I remembered, like she remembered something I didn't. Then, behind me, Tommy said, "She's mad you picked me." I turned. He was holding the broken wooden horse, except it wasn't broken anymore. The snapped wheel had somehow reattached. The wood was smooth. Hold Dot, I stared at it, stunned. "Did you fix that?" He didn't answer. Just placed it gently on the table. "She thought I'd pick someone else," he said softly. "But I picked you." That night the tapping came again. 3. Knocks. Silence. Then 4. Then 5. By morning, the mirror had shattered. And in the dust on the floor, someone had written a single word. Ode. The orchard appeared overnight. I swear to God it wasn't there the day before. Behind my house had always been nothing but hard-packed prairie dirt and brittle grass. But that morning, as the fog lifted, I saw them 12 twisted trees lined. In perfect rows, their bark black as pitch, their branches bent like reaching arms. And the fruit? I stepped closer, heart pounding, and saw they weren't fruit at all. Each branch held a shape swaddled in cloth, like a hanging bundle, like a face wrapped in linen. Tommy stood at my side, barefoot in the dirt, staring with the calmness of someone looking at old furniture. "She came," he said. "Who?" "The orchard woman." I asked if she was the one with the bandaged eyes. He nodded. "She grew these for the ones who didn't keep their promises." I was shaking. My hands, my voice, my knees. What promises? He didn't answer directly. Just stared at one of the trees, then whispered, "I wasn't supposed to leave, but I did. I found you. And now she wants it back." I wanted to scream, to run, to call the sheriff and beg for help. But who would believe me? Who could? Inside the house, I found a package had arrived. No postmark, no name. Wrapped in burlap and twine. Inside was a book hand-bound, thick, covered in red thread, stitched like veins. It smelled like rot and old rain. On the first page, written in shaky ink, it said, "The orchard grows where bargains rot." I took it to Preacher Mullen. He didn't touch it, just crossed himself and whispered, "Some things ain't Christian, Lena. Some things older than God's." Word. He begged me to burn it. Instead, I read it. Page after page, stories of women like me, childless, grieving, forgotten. Stories of bargains struck in moments of pain. $1, a whispered wish, a child given, not born, a memory erased. The orchard was where the debt ripened. I dropped the book, and something in my chest cracked open. Tommy came to my lap that night, and laid his head against me. "She'll come soon," he murmured, "to make you choose me or your forgetting." I tried to ask what that meant, but he fell asleep before he could answer. I dreamt of Caleb that night, of the hospital bed, of my empty hands and the sterile silence. But this time there was someone else in the room, a woman in the corner, her eyes wrapped in red cloth. She whispered in a voice made of splinters, "A child for a silence, $1 for the forgetting. You signed. He's mine." I woke screaming. Out the window, in the orchard, one of the swaddled shapes had fallen. It lay on the ground, rocking slightly in the wind. I went out there barefoot, driven by some mix of horror and hope. I knelt beside it and pulled the cloth away. It was me. Not dead, not alive. Just me, face blank, mouth open, eyes stitched shut. Behind me, someone said, "That was the version of you who agreed." I turned. The orchard woman stood among the trees. Her skin looked like bark and bruises. Her face was my own, only colder, emptier, and her eyes, beneath the bandages, wept sap like tears. She moved like something carved from wood, slow, deliberate, creaking with each step. "You wanted the pain gone," the orchard woman said. Her voice came from behind the bandages, but I felt it in my chest. "You begged, you forgot." I backed away, cradling the cloth-wrapped figure that looked like me. Its lips were moving, mouthing something I couldn't hear. Maybe a prayer, maybe a scream. "I never made any deal," I said. The orchard woman tilted her head. "You did, but then you made another. And now the orchard is confused." She stretched her arm toward Tommy, who stood at the edge of the trees, pale as milk. He left before the fruit was ripe, before the memory was ready to be plucked. He broke the cycle. "You let him." I wanted to scream at her to leave him alone, to take me instead, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The orchard whispered around us, branches shifting, bundles creaking, wind sighing like it remembered everything I didn't. Then the trees changed. Each trunk twisted to form a mirror, and in every one I saw versions of myself. One sobbed over a hospital crib. One held a wrinkled paper dollar, staring at it with bloodshot eyes. One was younger, 18, maybe, eyes wild with grief. One looked peaceful, asleep beneath a tree as red leaves fell all around her. "You chose forgetting," she said again. "I gave it to you, a clean slate, a quiet house, a womb without ache. But the boy chose you back." Tommy stepped forward, voice steady. "She remembers now?" "No," the orchard woman whispered. "She remembers pieces." With a flick of her wrist, she tore the bandages from her eyes, and I fell to my knees. Her eyes were mine, but older, wiser, cracked through with gold like seams in pottery. And inside them I saw it all. The day at the hospital when they told me the baby hadn't made it. The numb weeks that followed. The preacher whispering, "There are ways to ease sorrow." The dark room, the red thread, the paper dollar in my hand. The mirror I signed my name into. And the whisper, "You'll forget, and something else will grow in its place." I remembered it now. All of it. I didn't know what I was giving up, I said, tears spilling down my cheeks. She crouched before me. "You knew. But you chose." Silence. Now the silence has grown. The trees around us trembled. Bundles dropped like overripe fruit. Some burst open, child-sized, faceless, voiceless. "You can still choose," she said. "Give him back. Or take it all, every pain, every scream, every buried memory." Behind me, Tommy spoke. "It's okay if you don't want me." God, that cracked something deeper than bone. I turned, grabbed his face in my hands. "No, I remember. And I still choose you." The orchard screamed. Every tree bent backward, their trunks splitting, their fruit unraveling. The version of me in my arms turned to ash. The mirrors shattered. The orchard woman stood in the chaos, watching as the branches shriveled. The gold in her eyes dimmed. "You've broken the root," she whispered. but others still feed it. Then she vanished. I woke on the floor of my living room. Tommy curled beside me. The window was open. A breeze carried the scent of fresh earth and something else, something fading. The orchard was gone, Dot in its place. Just grass, Dot, but on my porch, the red-threaded book lay closed. A new title burned into its cover, The Ones Who Remember. For a while, life softened. Tommy laughed. Not often, but enough. He took to feeding the hens out back and drawing little pictures on brown paper bags, mostly trees with crooked branches and stick-figure women, smiling beneath them. When I asked what they were, he'd say, just us, in the after. The orchard was gone, but the feeling of it, the hum beneath the soil, the way shadows stretched too long near twilight, never quite left. Neither did the book. I kept it on a high shelf, though some nights I'd hear it shift, like a heartbeat in the quiet. One morning I found a new page had appeared. The boy was never a debt. He was the answer. I didn't understand what that meant until the next child arrived. Dot. It was a Tuesday. Rain tapping soft against the windows. I opened the door to find a boy standing there in boots 3 sizes too big, a crumpled dollar in one hand and a note scribbled in crayon in the other. He held it up. I read, "You're the one who can give me a mama. Joseph." His eyes were rimmed red, not from crying, but from holding it in. Behind him, no wagon. No adult, just a muddy road stretching out into fog. I didn't say a word, just stepped aside. Tommy peeked out from the hallway, saw the boy, and gave a little nod like he'd been expecting him. Later, when Joseph fell asleep, curled on the couch, I opened the book. More pages had appeared, entries, stories, drawings of orchards and children and silent trades. Dozens of names etched in black ink. Some were crossed out, some faded, some circled in red thread. I understood then. Tommy wasn't just a child caught in the curse. He'd been part of the breaking of it, Dot, and now, somehow, we were in the middle of something larger, something rippling outward, like cracks in a mirror. That night I sat on the porch, watching lightning blink across the hills. I remembered the day I held that crumpled dollar and whispered my wish. I remembered the cold that followed, the forgetting, Dot, and now I remembered it all, the ache, the loss, the weight, Dot, but also the choice. This time I chose not to forget, and that made all the difference. Inside, Joseph stirred in his sleep. He murmured a word, "Mama," and my throat tightened. I wasn't ready for this. I didn't feel strong enough, but maybe I didn't need to be strong. Maybe I just needed to stay, Dot, to choose. Every day, to remember, Dot, in the red-threaded book, a final new entry had appeared at the end of the page. When the first mother remembers, others will find their way. It wasn't a curse anymore, Dot, it was a calling. The ground behind my house, where the orchard once stood, had grown wild with color. Violets, golden bells, strange blossoms I couldn't name. Tommy said the soil still remembered, even if the trees were gone. Joseph started drawing maps, Dot, at first. They seemed like scribbles, childish, loops and boxes. But one morning he handed me a folded sheet with a red X in the middle and said, "This is where it starts again." I laughed until I noticed a spot he'd marked matched an old grave plot near the edge of Drake Hollow, one the town had long forgotten. Tommy and I followed the map that afternoon. We found it just past a dry creek bed, nothing but a patch of earth where wildflowers bent without wind. But the ground smelled wrong, too sweet, like rotting fruit and smoke. Tommy stood over it, hands at his sides. "It's her, Margaret Trenwith." I blinked. "Who?" He pointed to the red-threaded book which I'd brought along wrapped in a flour sack. "She made the first forgetting here, left her grief in the soil. That's where the orchard learned how to grow. We dug. The soil gave way too easy, like it wanted to be opened. We didn't find bones. Not at first. We found 3 boxes. Old, wooden, sealed with wax and wrapped in red string. Inside each, tokens, baby shoes, a lock of golden hair, a cracked porcelain doll's head, all nestled in pages torn from letters and hospital records. I knelt in the dirt, holding those pieces of someone else's sorrow, and something inside me broke wide open. For all the children no one claimed, for all the mothers who chose silence, I wept like I hadn't wept in years. Tommy took my hand and said, "She buried the pain, but the orchard grew from what she left." I didn't ask how he knew. We reburied the boxes deeper this time. I whispered their names, each written faintly on the underside of the lids. Then, together, we planted seeds. Not from the orchard, from my own garden. Marigolds, lavender, sunflowers. Memory, not silence. The book fluttered open on its own as we left. A new page had appeared, blank but for a single line. Where truth is buried, the orchard cannot bloom. That night I dreamed of Margaret Trenwith. She stood among burning trees, her face streaked with ash and sap. She said, "I was the first to forget. I wish someone had remembered me." I woke with her name on my lips and the smell of sunflowers in the air, and I knew. Then we weren't done. Not yet. The orchard was changing, but it still had roots. The letter arrived tucked in the slats of my window, sealed in wax that shimmered faintly red. No postmark, no handwriting I recognized, but inside was a plea written in trembling pencil. She says her dreams are full of trees. My daughter speaks. In leaves, please help. Ruth T. I don't know how Ruth T. found me, but I didn't hesitate. 3 days later, a stagecoach rolled into Drake Hollow, and out stepped a girl no older than 10, holding her mother's hand so tight her knuckles went white. Her eyes were edged with gold, not the kind you see in paintings, but the kind that flickers like candlelight through stained glass. "She talks in her sleep," Ruth whispered, "about sap and dirt and a lady with no eyes." The girl, Nora, didn't speak much. She didn't have to. That night she stood barefoot in my yard and pointed to the horizon. "There's a tree growing in me," she said, and I believed her. I made a bed for her beside Tommy and Joseph. She didn't cry, didn't ask for her mama, just lay there, hands folded on her belly like something inside her was waiting to bloom. I read from the red-threaded book each night now. The pages wrote themselves, names, symbols, warnings. Some pages turned warm in my hands, others cold. One began to hum when Nora walked past. The orchard wasn't gone. It was in her. And maybe in others. 2. By morning, a new sapling had sprouted behind the henhouse, too perfect to be natural. Its bark shimmered with that same faint red I'd seen in the wax. The leaves shimmered silver when they caught the sun. The boy said nothing, just stood in a silent line beside it. I touched the trunk. It pulsed. I didn't scream. Not this time. Instead, I brought out a match. But when I lit it, the flame bent away from the tree like it refused to burn. This wasn't something fire could fix. I sent a letter back to Ruth, telling her Nora could stay as long as she needed, that I wouldn't let her become just another forgotten mother. She came 2 days later, held me like a sister. "I thought I was losing her," she said. I told her, "You might still, but not the way the orchard wants." That night I dreamed again, not of the orchard woman, but of me. Dozens of me. Lined up beneath a blood-red tree, each holding a child, each whispering the same words. We choose. We do not forget. When I woke, the red-threaded book had a new name stitched into its cover, The Orchard. Mothers. We are not witches. We are not saints. We are not saviors. We are the ones who stayed, the ones who chose again. The girl sat on my porch at sunrise, barefoot and humming. Nora, her eyes were clearer now, less gold, more gray. But every now and then, when the wind caught her hair just right, I could still see the shimmer of the orchard in her. I brought her warm bread and sat beside her. The red-threaded book rested between us, heavier than it used to be. Its pages now thick with names, maps, drawings, and letters from mothers I'd never met. "What are you thinking about?" I asked Dot. She pointed to the horizon. There's another tree coming." I didn't flinch. "I can feel it," she whispered. "But it's different now." The breeze picked up, not harsh, not threatening, just full. Of memory, voices, names. The orchard hadn't been destroyed. It had been rewritten. It didn't hunger for grief now. It listened for truth. Behind the house, the garden I'd planted over Margaret Trenwith's resting place bloomed with impossible life. Sunflowers twice as tall as me, lavender buzzing with bees, vines curling up toward the sky like they remembered light. Tommy and Joseph were building a wooden bench out there. Said they wanted a place for the new children to sit when they arrived, because they would come. We knew that now, each with their dollar, each with a memory they hadn't been allowed to keep. Each one a question. The wind changed mid-morning. Warm, dry, carrying the scent of apples and rain. I stepped outside and saw a child standing at the edge of my yard. No older than 5, curly hair, empty eyes. No dollar. No note. Just silence. She didn't walk, she appeared, as if sorrow itself had shaped her from dust and breath. "She's not a trade," Tommy whispered beside me. "She's a wound." The child collapsed in my arms. Her skin was cold, her breath faint, and then I heard it, a whisper, not from her mouth, but from the roots, the orchard's voice, twisting up from beneath the floorboards, through the walls, into my bones. This one was never offered. She was taken. My hands shook. Taken? Not by a bargain, not by forgetting, but by cruelty. Loss with no choice behind it. Nora stepped forward, placed her small palm on the child's forehead, and whispered something I couldn't hear, and the child exhaled. Not gone, not healed. But here. Alive. Carried her inside. Made her a place by the fire. I didn't know her name, but the book would. That night, I lit every candle in the house. The children sat around me, quiet as church. I opened the book to a blank page and wrote, "We remember you. We choose you. We do not forget." The book glowed, just for a second, then turned the page and waited. The orchard still grows, but now it feeds on love remembered, not pain denied. I am no longer just Lena Moore. I am an orchard mother, and we are many. Thanks for riding with us through another tale from the Old West. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More adventures are waiting on the trail ahead. See you next time.